Welcome to Fluorescene.
Hello, and welcome to the Fluorescene Show number 23. I'm your host, Dr. Alan Glazier, and we've got a great show for you today. Now, please support us by hitting that subscribe button, the red one right down there. Click the bell, and you'll get notified of new shows, segments, and other things we put up. Right now, many of us are headed back from the AOA meeting in Denver. For perspective, I'm recording this before the meeting, and that's why in anticipation of seeing lots of you and reconnecting, I'm going to project and say it was great seeing you. Can't wait for Denver, great city. This week in ODs on Facebook, a doc posts that a patient brought her deodorant as a gift. It was awkward, except at a prior encounter, they discussed that she was dissatisfied with her brand. But the unexpected gift made the doc laugh anyway. Doc, you need to be thinking bigger. Next time, discuss how dissatisfied you are with your bourbon, right? Now, doc added, I once got a pair of pantyhose size queen, and that was a male doc. It reminds me of the time I bought deodorant, and on the warning label, it said avoid contact with eyes, but at that point, it was too late. Then there was a guy who bought new deodorant, and the instructions said remove cap and push up bottom. Guy said his armpits still stink, but his farts smell amazing. Go figure. Now, a doc asked, what's up with the older generation of ODs? Now, his patient was a 101-year-old retired optometrist dissatisfied with his 2070 best-corrected VA. After declining the doc's advice to consider IOLs for many years, he finally agreed. The doc mentions he has other elderly retired ODs in the same situation who seem terrified of cataract surgery. The docs were happy that the doc referred to the older generation as those over 100, including me. Now, I would have told that doc to look at the bright side. Most of us only expect to have 6 feet of dirt in our face at that point. So we got a great show for you today. We welcome Dr. Katie Greiner, OD, MS, MBA, Chief Executive Officer at Northeast Ohio Eye Surgeons. Dr. Greiner holds several prestigious professional leadership positions in Ohio, lectures, publishes, and is a clinical assistant professor at OSU Optometry. And we have Dr. Justin Bazan, one of the more familiar faces in the profession. Among his many amazing accomplishments, Dr. Bazan is a prolific speaker, writer, co-founder of Young ODs of America, or YODA. We have another episode of Dr. Mile Brujic and Dr. David Kading's clinical insights from Optometric Insights, Eyecare news, and more. So sit back, pour yourself something as long as it's not fluorescene on your patient's white blouse, and enjoy today's show. Today, I'm excited to interview Katie Greiner, OD/MS MBA FAAO, Chief Executive Officer at Northeast Ohio Eye Surgeons. She graduated OSU College of Optometry in '09, where she was named the '09 Graduate of the Year, graduating with honors and receiving the Beta Sigma Kappa Award for highest GPA in her graduating class. She completed a residency in ocular disease and surgical co-management at Davis Dewar Dean in Madison, Wisconsin, and went on to receive a master's in vision science from the Ohio State University College of Optometry. As if that wasn't enough education, Dr. Greiner completed her healthcare MBA at Baldwin Wallace in 2019. She holds several prestigious professional leadership positions within the state, including serving as the Ohio Optometric Zone 3 governor, and she sits on the East-West Eye Conference's visionary and education committees. She's a frequent lecturer on the topics of contact lenses and eye surgery. She served as state membership chair for the Ohio Optometric Association for 5 years and also serves as a clinical assistant professor at the Ohio State College of Optometry. She's a recipient of the Jack T. Keith 2014 Young Optometrist of the Year Award by the Ohio Optometric Association and was awarded the Garland Clay Award for the most cited optometry publication over the previous 5 years. She's also one of the most notable grads of Ohio State University in the past 100 years or something like that. It's crazy. What an incredible resume. Welcome, Dr. Greiner.
Thank you, Dr. Glazier, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I had to say that really fast because if I didn't, it would have taken up the whole show. You realize that? How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. It's beautiful here in Ohio, and I'm talking to an awesome mentor, OD of mine, even though you might not even know it. So I'm really excited to be on your show.
Wow. I had I known, I would have talked you out of anything I said. That's fantastic and a huge compliment. You know, when I put this together, the questions in the interview, there didn't seem to be much in optometry you haven't done, from clinical duties through clinical trials and research. Your role as COO, CFO, your experience run the gamut. Let's start with something that's really different for an OD, especially an OD involved in academia. Tell us about your decision to go for an MBA.
It's something I thought I always wanted to do. I really enjoy going to school. I don't like the loans that come with it, but I think they're well worth it. And I just felt like even though Ohio State had an amazing business track that Dr. Mark Wright ran when I was there, I feel like we still don't get enough business training once we get into the real world. And I was working with other professionals that we were saying the same things, but in different ways. We weren't communicating properly. And I felt like I needed that training so I could talk the right talk. And get things done and help grow our business, grow our practice, and become smarter about looking at our financial statements, managing our P&L here in the practice. And so getting my MBA helped me there. I enjoyed it. It's great for networking. In that program, I was with a lot of different walks of life in the professional world of healthcare, from others, doctors, surgeons, nurses, people that were on the accounting side of hospitals, people in hospital administration. It was really eye-opening. And so I would recommend it to anybody. I would do it all over again if you gave me the choice.
That's awesome. Do you recommend it for other ODs?
I really do. Of all practices, whether you're in a retail setting, you own your own practice, you don't own your own practice, you work in ophthalmology, you work in private practice optometry, it is so beneficial. We do a lot of work in the ethics world of healthcare, a lot of work in, the legal aspects and things like that you just don't get enough time in school to dive into when you're in optometry school. So most definitely, it really broadened my horizons.
And I've heard that it's helpful after in your case, it would be your optometry school, but it's helpful before you go for an MBA to spend a couple of years in the working world. So what was the gap between getting your optometry degree and getting your MBA? And what was the gap in between?
10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 years until I did take my time doing the program. I'm very much a people person. So I decided to do it all in person instead of online. I think it's very doable online around a practice setting. I decided to do a weekend program. So I was every other weekend, Saturday and Sundays. And that worked well for me. But I definitely needed some real world experience to be able to apply that in the coursework. And my program required that you were a full-time employee and you'd been in your career for 5 years. So that was actually a requirement for the program.
So every other week you were working in school 2 days, 7 days a week, every other week. That's incredible. Now you're currently the CEO of Northeast Ohio Eye Surgeons. Were you the CEO before you got the MBA, or did the MBA help you gain that title?
It definitely helped me gain that title. I was our interim administrator for 3 years prior to getting my MBA. And my boss, Dr. Lohman, who's our owner and surgeon, head surgeon for the practice, said, if you seem to have a knack for this, if it's something you really enjoy, let's get you your MBA so we can really grow this and give you, more of a title here. Wow. And so he challenged me on a Friday night. And by Monday morning, I had a list of programs for him that I was interested in and said, hey, let's do this. And so he helped me get through that program. And I enrolled, and it took me almost 3 years. I had a baby during it. So I know it was crazy, but the program worked with me. And so I was able to kind of lighten my load for a year when I had a newborn, and was able to get back on track and get through it in 3 years.
Wow. I mean, I have so many questions about how do you balance this, and this, like the baby, the school, the work. How do you, let's just leave it at, how do you balance your clinical and your business responsibilities as CEO?
So I get that question a lot. I love seeing patients, and that is what my mission has been ever since the day I wanted to become an optometrist. And I do not feel that I can be relevant in my world of managing practices without understanding the boots on the ground, what's happening with my patients, what's happening with our staff, what's happening with the billing that I'm doing in the clinic, and seeing how that, all comes out on the, the payer end. And so I have made a vow that I am not giving up my clinical practice. Now it's only 14 to 20 hours a week, so it definitely is reduced. I've loved that because it can be very specialized. So I really do a lot of my focus on specialty lens fitting, scleral lenses for diseased corneas. And I also work a lot in our LASIK program with patients. So kind of two totally different spectrums. But that has been so important to me. And I also like to teach and lecture. And I feel that I need to be seeing patients and experiencing that, and seeing, technology changes and being able to talk to those things because I am doing it. My staff really hate Tuesdays because I'm in clinic for 10 hours on Monday, and on Tuesday I'm fixing everything that I wanted to go better on Monday. So Tuesday is like, okay, what could we have done better in the clinic, and how can we fix it today?
Your boss sounds like an incredible leader, someone who recognizes people's talents and elevates them and supports that. And I see that in you too, going back in and thinking about what happened and fixing it. That's really incredible. It's an incredible way to run a business, and it sounds like there's just great people, and the people are everything in these businesses. When I read about your clinical duties, is that it's heavily centered around refractive surgery. I imagine being in an eye surgeon's practice, that would be the case. And I think many of our viewers pretty familiar with what's involved in post-op cataract and phakic IOLs in laser surgery, but you also do follow and treat patients with advanced corneal procedures like DSEC and DMEC. And does the post-operative care of those patients differ, and how does it differ in your role?
It most definitely does. I mean, I think all patients need some hand-holding, but those patients, are not going to have that fun refractive excitement at 20/20 the next day, like you might after a LASIK or a premium IOL type surgery. So, these patients have gone through a lot. They have suffered from eye disease probably for a long time. And you celebrate those little victories at every visit, but they're also, seen pretty frequently, and they're on steroids at a pretty high level. So you're monitoring a lot of things. And a lot of times those patients have comorbidities. A lot of our cornea cases also have glaucoma or retina problems as well. So there's a lot to manage in those cases. I enjoy those challenges, and I do think those are actually some of our happiest patients, because even that subtle change in their vision with a DSEC or a DMEC can mean that they could drive again. So it really is opening up their world and helping their activities of daily living. So I really greatly enjoy anterior segment by far is my favorite, but I really enjoy seeing those patients. And we've gotten into the cross-linking world now too, and those are starting to become some really fun cases, because I like the younger population that I think I was drawn into anterior segment because I started seeing 23-year-olds with debilitating eye problems that their only option was scleral lenses or cornea transplants. And now we have some other options for them, like cross-linking, so that we can preserve the vision they have at a young age. Obviously, I don't like eye disease for any ages, but in school, being a 25-year-old, seeing 25-year-old patients that are really struggling to get a career, start a family, drive a car because of something like keratoconus, really hit home for me.
It's really interesting what you said. If you think about it, and of course, and we're going to talk actually about myopia control next. You and I both are big on myopia control, and myopia is a disease, but when I say it, when I parse out these two aspects of refractive surgery, we have the refractive surgery for cosmesis, vision / cosmesis, and what grew out of that were these refractive surgeries for eye disease. So they're really two big categories. I never thought about it that way. It's really interesting. In 2010, when you were doing your residency at Davis Stewart Dean, you were involved in a meeting called Slowing Myopia Progression in Children. And in 2013, you published a multifocal contact lens myopia control article. It was really early on. Like me, we've been at it for a while before it was, we've been at the game of myopia control before it was even a game. And talk about what myopia control was like in 2010 compared to today.
So I give all of that credit towards Dr. Jeff Walleen at Ohio State. Pretty much everyone knows his name. He is the best advisor and mentor. And I really wanted to work in pediatrics and contact lenses. And he said, well, I know a really great way to bring those two together, and it's myopia control. And this really was early on. Houston had been doing some work in it, and Ohio State had really started to advance in myopia control. And so I feel like we were one of the first to do some studies there. And I was so excited. I didn't know what a big thing it was going to be. And now I look back at it and think, wow, I really got to work with someone that was on the forefront of that. And it was pretty novel at the time. We were using ProClear multifocals, D&N lenses. And now, all the developments we're seeing, especially with the MiSight Cooper lens now, it all came from that, early studies. So it's exciting. I do as much of it as I can right now. Again, with my limited practice, I have a pediatric optometrist that does a little more of it. I can't speak too much of it because it's under trial, but we're doing some Ortho-K scleral lens fittings now too. So in myopia control, so that's kind of new cutting edge. I always like to be part of that, new stuff that's out there. And so maybe next time we talk, Alan, we'll see how that study's going.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. And I'd love to have Jeff on the show someday. I've got to reach out to him. It's funny, in 2010, you're talking about using the ProClear, I imagine, in some studies, because there was no data at that time that it had an effect. You were just looking into it. There were no studies out for the soft distance center lenses had an effect, or anything for that matter. Back then, we were using atropine 1%.
Right.
And we were using Ortho-K, which did have some data, but the atropine already had a ton of data, but it had all those side effects and everything. And today, we have tools without side effects that have peer-reviewed, longitudinal, in some cases, data to back them up. And now, like you said, with MiSight, we have an FDA-approved product. So this is just a burgeoning area of specialty I'd like to see, that optometry owns. I think it's fantastic. So that's awesome.
And something really cool about Jeff Walleen that I always like to talk about is he looks at the patient as a whole human being. So what is their mental health and their psyche as well? So we did some and how they felt wearing glasses versus how they felt wearing contact lenses. And we showed in this really small little study, and it was just kind of fun for us to look at. And we did a couple little presentations on this around Columbus and even at AOA on how these patients felt at a young age wearing contacts. They had more self-esteem. They felt like they were better in their sports because they didn't have glasses getting in the way. And so that's when we said, well, it's a no-brainer. If we can do some myopia control and it's wearing either ortho-K lenses or bifocal contact, it's better for all around self-help too. And going through those trials and tribulations of kids being mean to four eyes back in the day. I think glasses have become even more trendy though now, and it's not as big of a deal.
Yeah, there's a lot in store and a lot we have to learn still, but in the end, hopefully they'll have some kind of a treatment, some kind of a quick treatment that the kids can benefit from and find easier to use than what we're doing now. And speaking of contacts, by the way, one of your areas is specialty contacts outside of ortho-K and myopia control. And you're hearing a lot about specialty contacts these days, especially sclerals and some of the hybrids. But there's a big buzz around this. But what you don't hear a lot about are specialty contacts as they pertain to prosthetics. And you're one of the leaders in that area. Talk about your work with prosthetics.
I really enjoy, taking a patient that just cosmetically has said, this eye has been disfigured. I felt uncomfortable with my appearance for so long, and fitting them in something easy like a soft contact. Sometimes I'll get them specially made. Sometimes it's as easy. I tell my peers, like, throw a fresh look color on that eye and you can cover up a white cornea. If I can give some vision to a disfigured eye along with the cosmesis, that's a bonus. But sometimes it's an eye that, just long gone in terms of vision, but they still want that, they don't want the questions from people like, what's wrong with your eye, or the funny looks. And that's changed their self-esteem big time just in doing that cosmetic type fit. I also like to use it for patients with glare issues. Our office is a big referral center for complications. If someone comes from an outside provider that had a complicated cataract surgery and maybe they had significant iris atrophy or an IOL that's off center that couldn't be fixed, we'll do some work with those patients. And sometimes they end up in my chair creating a prosthetic lens with blocking glare, maybe a black backed contact, and I can make them a smaller pupil that can help not only cosmetically but functionally as well. And those are some of my favorite cases.
Do you have you can give a plug to do you have a soft prosthetic company that you work with that you find is effective and that you love?
I've used Orion with the stacking of the different lenses so that I can get a better color match for patients. Those are nice for blue-eyed patients. You can create like a limbal ring, so it really can look very natural. And then Alden has some really nice walnut-colored lenses, brown lenses, so I have found those useful. And like I said, don't forget about some of those, dailies colors or fresh look colors. Those are out there, and those can be very easy for patients.
Yep, they work. You have them in stock. You may want to try that first. I found that also. Now, I want to move on to some of the articles that you've written. I like to, the first one I want to ask you about is you wrote an article. I'm going to read this. It's called Sustainability is a Contact Lens Practice Differentiator. What was that about?
So I was fortunate enough to go to Costa Rica with Cooper Vision when they were doing some tours of their factory. So our practice won a Cooper Best Practice Award a couple years ago. And so I went to Costa Rica to tour their facilities, do some education with them. And a big piece of that was on sustainability and how they recycle products. And they even recycle like the rainwater of Costa Rica to use it in their, not in their contact lenses, but in their sewer systems and their bathrooms there. And so it was something that really rang true to me. And I said, well, I got to bring that back to our office and make sure that we are, more sustainable. And I'm hearing my 4-year-old, I wrote about him in the article. He's in preschool telling me, well, Mom, you got to recycle that. Why'd you throw that in the trash? He understood it more than the adults. And so we did a big push in our office to recycle the contact lenses, especially dailies. I mean, you're wearing 365 times 2, right? That's a lot of contacts that are going into our oceans. There's articles out there saying that, there's microparticles of plastic in our water supply, even in the fish that we're eating. And that's just seems that we've got to do better. So we put in contact lens recycling programs. in addition to just making sure staff's recycling everything that we're using that's recyclable, cans, plastic. So we have recycling bins all over our lunchrooms. We have little mini containers in every exam room for trial lenses that we're using in the office to make sure we're disposing of them. And then we reward patients with drawings and prizes for bringing in their contacts for us to recycle for them.
That's excellent. Whenever I get into talking about recycling and environmental concerns with what we do, I always tell people, even though all those dailies, it's great, it's important to recycle them, but compared to the lenses that require solutions, I don't know if anybody has ever seen it, but when they create the huge bottles of solutions, they stamp them out of this huge sheet of plastic, and all the plastic from the bottles, hopefully most of that gets recycled, I don't know, but the sheets, it's a lot of plastic being used, a lot more than they use in producing a year's worth of dailies. So the cleanest way for us to do this is to prescribe dailies and ask people to, not flush them and not throw them into the sink.
Right. And then the things that these are recycled into are really cool. The people are making playgrounds and benches and construction for everyday life out of these recycled materials. So it's all being used in a good way. That's
awesome. Fantastic. And one of the things I like to do when I look at talks is I like to pick out the ones with really interesting, cool names. And yours was Jeopard Eyes. Tell us about that.
This was during, we've really tried to make things fun over COVID times on Zoom and everything, but Jeopard Eyes we did in person as a game show, and I give credit to Dr. Bill Rudy here in my practice, but I was the Alex Trebek of the night, and we just had fun with it. So isn't it more fun to be on a CE meeting when it's interactive and your audience isn't, falling asleep or disengaged? So we were able to do a lot of fun categories and have everyone engage with us. And then we did another one, which I do remember watching as a kid. Fun show, and so we all acted like different funny contestants and made it really interactive. And we had we did it very last minute, and we had like over 200 participants, and it was our highest feedback was thank you for engaging us and letting us answer some questions. And it's impressive to see what your colleagues how much knowledge they were teaching us too. They're throwing out in the chat all these different things like, oh, I would add this to the question, and so we learned a lot from it too. It was really fun to engage that way.
That's neat. It was kind of like a panel, an interactive panel based on the game Jeopardy, sounds like.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Now, a hot topic these days that you've written about and spoke about before it was fashionable was the topic of diversity and equality. And what is your driver in this area, and what message would you like the viewers of this show to hear, especially during this toxic environment that we're living in right now?
It's huge. I am a board member for IDOC, and so that's where the initiative that was a big deal during Black Lives Matter, and IDOC put through a big initiative on DEI. But we had also been doing the same thing in our office, and I think we'd always been good at it, but I think we needed to talk about it more. And during that time, we really dove in. For those of you that have done a really inclusive policy manual, it's, there's legal aspects. It's a lot of work. It's not something you do overnight. And we really dove into it as a company and said, we're really limiting people on just general self-expression. Being able to be diverse in many ways. There's gender, there's skin color, but there's also just expression of who you are. And I feel like our policy manual is like, you should have very perfectly placed hair and perfect, standard colors, and you can't have a tattoo even on your wrist. And in this day and age, people express themselves in many ways, and sometimes that is a hair design or a tattoo, and I just don't think those things should be as taboo as they may have been before. I think we need to allow people to express themselves and be who they want to be, and that's who they are. And so we just really made a big deal of that in our office. Like, let's just get to know who you really are, your personality, and let's see how that, shines through. And then, of course, with the Black Lives Matter, we just have a no tolerance for that kind of that kind of problem that can exist in our practice if someone had a concern with their staff member that was working with them because they were a gender they didn't want them to be, or they were a color that they didn't want them to be. That patient's not welcome in our office. We took a big stand and said, if they're making our staff feel uncomfortable for a reason that we won't tolerate, that's not a patient we want to keep here. So we've done it in the past, but we've become even more strict on patients that we will fire from our office because they don't embrace diversity and equality and inclusion. They don't. And so we're okay with that. And there's been some patients that have been here for 20 years and have made some comments, and we said, bye. It's not worth it in our practice.
It's not okay. And if you as the CEO, as the owners, aren't supporting people for who they are, what are they even doing? You know, why are they even there? How do they even come to work and feel good about where they work? Yeah.
And our staff very comfortable, very much an open book to us, saying, you know, this exam made me uncomfortable, and we've told them, boom, get a manager, and we'll escort the patient out. And unfortunately, we've had to do that more times than I would like, that people are saying things like that. And again, it's just a zero tolerance.
I remember when I was a young doc, probably just 2 years out. I'm Jewish and not religious, but culturally and born Jewish, and I had a patient with a swastika on his arm, and I was so torn, but I had to do what I had to do. I just had to put anything personal I had aside, and most people I think can do that, but I think you're right in getting rid of those few who just are stuck in those old ways that just are not productive for society. So good stuff.
Yep. And I've dealt with that just being a young, as a doctor, you encounter that. You come in the room, they're like, you're too young to be a doctor, or, I thought you were going to be a man, or definitely working in an ophthalmology office, oh, you're not an ophthalmologist. That's my favorite one. And I will prove to them that an optometrist will do just as good of a job, if not better, and take really good care of their eyes. I bet you love it at the end of the exam. I'm sure you've had this where a patient's like, you're the best ophthalmologist I've ever had. And I say, no, I'm the best optometrist you've ever had. I love to say that.
That's great. And it's funny because I'd also get at the beginning of the exam, I'd say, so what brings you in today? And the patient would say, well, I went to this optometrist down the street, and, it wasn't a real doctor like you. And I'll be like, so
keep going.
I don't even need to get into that I'm not an ophthalmologist until the end, but yeah, that's so
yep.
funny. Just because it's taking up time. But it's funny, people's perceptions, as I heard one really wise practice management expert say one time. They don't know where you went to school. They don't even know what your degree is, what your grades were, and those diplomas on the wall don't impress them. The only thing the patients know is if you met their needs, and that's how they gauge whether you're a good doctor or not. No, not whether you're an ophthalmologist, optometrist, or the number one in your class. And that's an important thing.
Exactly.
For those young docs out there to remember. Fantastic. Well, we're going to wrap up soon, but before we go, can you tell our viewers about your family?
Yeah, I would love to. So I know you gave me wonderful accolades, but I definitely can't do my job every day without the support of my wonderful family. My parents were always an inspiration to me to go into a field that I loved. They weren't pushing me in any direction except just do something that you're passionate about. And so I credit both of my parents for that support. My husband is amazing. He is extremely helpful with our busy 2 children. So I have 2 boys, a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. I want to grow them into budding eye doctors, but I just want them to do something they love also. So I don't know if I'm going to get there in the eye doctor world, but as long as they love it, that's what matters. And, I will tell you, there are days that I feel like I'm probably doing everything only 10% of what I should be, but I enjoy it. I like the variability in what I get to do. And again, I just couldn't do it without the support of my amazing family to help me, do the best in everything that I want to try to achieve professionally and in my family life.
I know you feel like you're doing 10%, but you're probably actually doing 90% more than everyone else. So that's where you're seeing this wrong. What are your boys' names?
Henry and Luke.
That's cute. It's cute. I have 2 boys. They're 22 months apart, but they're college now. So that's great.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good seeing that they're buddies. You know, they love to adventure together. COVID has made them so much better friends than they ever were before. So there was a blessing there. They're inseparable best friends. They can fight like no other, but they also can, you know, have the best of superhero conversations and Pokemon.
That's record as much as you can, because I have I was really good on video, and now in my retirement I can just sit and cry and watch videos of my children growing up. It's gonna be a great retirement. That's what I plan on doing.
I love it. I've had to buy more storage on Google and my iPhone because of all the videos.
Yeah, Gmail gives you like or Google gives you like a terabyte for like $9 a month. It's easy.
Yeah. It's worth it for all these memories. So I will do that too. I already do that. I sit and cry looking at their baby videos. So I'm already there.
You gotta be in the moment for now, and then do
yes,
that later.
yes.
That's
okay, thank you for the advice.
And you're active. You love to travel. You love yoga, and like me, it sounds like you're a big skier, because skiing came first when I saw your interests. Is that right?
Yes. If you could see me stand up right now, I'm all of 5 feet tall. Athletic skills are not I was not gifted with those, except for skiing. My parents put me on skis at like 4 years old. Athletic talent. I taught my husband to ski so we could go together, and he's better than me now. I've had my kids on skis, and they're getting better at it too, and I look forward to that being our big family adventures, getting out west. But I love it. Put me in a ski house over a beach anytime.
It's so smart, because when if you want to be manipulative with your kids, get them on skis when they're really young, because when they grow up and they want to be with their friends or their girlfriends, and you want to be with them, if you throw a ski trip at them, they're always going to say
exactly.
And that's what we do.
So you've done this.
I've lived it, and it works. So you're
okay.
You don't have to do much. But for those viewers who want to figure out how to manipulate their children into spending time with them, skiing is a great way. Where did you grow up that skiing was so prominent in your family?
So I grew up right here in Northeast Ohio, but we're only about an hour and a half from the New York Mountains. In college, I was in ski club, and we would ride a bus all the way out to Breckenridge. And so I got hooked out west when I was about 18 years old, and pretty much have made a trip out west every season, at least once or twice every season. And then the great conferences, the ski CE conferences, now I try to frequent those. I really enjoy going out to Big Sky, Montana, when they do their conference out there every year. Their association does their Montana Association conference there.
Yeah, and then Joe Pismenti and Jim Finelli do one in Utah too. Maybe I'll see you at one of those, because I'm planning on.
Yeah, I love them.
That's fantastic. Have you traveled anywhere interesting outside of skiing? I was just in Breckenridge, by the way, a couple weeks ago. But
yeah, we just got back from the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina and did some hiking. So in COVID, my sons have become pretty good little hikers. We can get the 4-year-old to do about 5 miles, which is impressive. There's a lot of snacks and goldfish, especially along the trail. But we spent time up, and that's a beautiful area in the spring and in the fall. And, I still have a lot of the United States to explore. But my favorite is the Amalfi Coast in Italy. We went there right before we had kids. We decided we were going to do one big trip before we started a family. And that was a whole family trip with my sister and my parents. And it's beautiful. I would love to get back there.
Yeah, it's fantastic there. Well, that's really, really fantastic. Sounds like you have a lovely family, and you're a lovely person and brilliant, and you're bringing a lot to the profession. And I think we appreciate you for that. I really enjoyed the interview and getting to know a little bit more about you. I had so much more to talk about. Would you mind 6 months, 8 months from now coming back, and we can do an update, especially maybe when that study that you're talking about comes out and you know more about scleral ortho-K? I'd love for you to come talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to be back. Thank you.
That'll be great. Well, listen, you take care, be safe, and get through the final stages, hopefully, of this COVID thing, and enjoy those babies, videotape them a lot, and thank you for coming on the Fluorescene Show. Really appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Hello, I'm Dr. Alan Glazier here with this week's Eye and Vision Care Research News. In corneal news, Korean research team has developed a new method for performing sutureless amniotic membrane transplantation using mussel adhesive protein. The research team at Pohang University of Science and Technology have together applied a light curable protein bioadhesive named FixLight to an animal model that simulated the transplantation of the amniotic membrane on an actual ocular surface. The joint research team used a visible light curable bioadhesive with liquid solid photocross-linking characteristics in the surgery, focusing on the high transparency of the amniotic membrane. After epithelialization progressed over the transplanted amniotic membrane, the adhesive completely biodegraded and regenerated into an integrated epithelial tissue. It was confirmed that the operation could be completed more than 2 times faster than the traditional suture method, and that the therapeutic effect of the conjunctival regeneration through stably bonded amniotic membranes could successfully replace the conventional procedure. FixLight shows promise for commercialization in the near future. In presbyopia news, LENZ, LENZ Therapeutics, a company developing a miotic for presbyopia, showed significant, rapid, and long-lasting improvements in near vision in a phase 2 trial. The eye drop is based on a formulation of aciclovir, which has been used in Europe for glaucoma and causes pupil contraction to create a pinhole effect to strengthen close-up vision. LENZ is not alone in attempting to give people better vision. Last month, Alcon commercially launched its presbyopia mitigating lens in the U.S. Alcon also has brought fluid-based intraocular lens implant maker PowerVision for $285 million in March, and Israeli biotech Oasis Pharmaceuticals raised $30 million for late-stage tests of its own presbyopia eye drop treatment in September. In AMD news, researchers at the National Eye Institute have determined how certain peptides can protect neuronal cells found in the retina. The peptides might someday be used to treat degenerative retinal diseases such as age-related macular degeneration. The study was published in the Journal of Neurochemistry. NEI is part of the National Institutes of Health. The peptides are produced from a protein called pigment epithelium-derived factor, PEDF, produced by RPE cells. Researchers tested whether a specific peptide could protect immature retinal cells in a dish. They found 2 peptides were capable of saving photoreceptors. Further, the 2 peptides work by binding to a protein receptor, pigment epithelial-derived factor R, on the surface of neurons. PEDFR, which processes molecules like DHA and omega-3 fatty acid, critical for babies' development and for eye health. Signaling might be a key component of regulating omega-3 fatty acids like DHE, both during eye development and in maintaining the eye's health over time. They're hoping that they can harness some of these protective effects in a peptide-based therapeutic approach in the near future. In more AMD news, researchers from the Carlos III University of Madrid have created a mathematical simulation that recreates the progression of age-related macular degeneration to help to better understand its origin and evolution. Scientists have created a simulation of a computational model of angiogenesis taking into account how it occurs in the eye. The study is published in the journal Biomedicine's Research. Hope that with this mathematical modeling, they can better understand how the pathology is generated, how long it takes to progress, and if there is any way to stop it with therapies that are being used today. The model could be used to investigate other retinal diseases. In Keratoconus news, investigators sought to determine the outcomes of treatment of keratoconus and corneal ectasias utilizing topographic-guided ablation with WaveLight Contoura, followed by corneal cross-linking. They found an increase in visual quality that was quite remarkable, and even patients with residual refractive errors were happy enough that few wanted to wear corrective lenses for small amounts of refractive error. Treatment with WaveLight Contoura combined with 15-minute corneal cross-linking seems to be an effective and safe treatment for keratoconus and should be considered a primary treatment to prevent corneal transplant as well as improve vision and corneal irregularity. In pediatric glaucoma news, scientists have shown that infants who undergo cataract surgery have a 22% chance of developing glaucoma over the next decade. The research, published in JAMA Ophthalmology, noted this heightened risk was present whether or not the babies received an intraocular lens implant. The study involved following 110 infants who received cataract surgery and were either assigned an artificial lens implant or went without a lens. After 10 years, 25 children had developed glaucoma, while a further 21 children had elevated eye pressure. And that's all for today's Fluorescene News. Enjoy the rest of today's show.
All right, today I'm here with Dr. Justin Bazan, who grew up in Utica, New York. He attended Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas for his undergraduate and SUNY optometry, where he graduated in '04. In '08, he opened his practice Park Slope Eye in Brooklyn, New York. He pioneered the use of social media as a marketing tool to help build a successful practice. Dr. Bazan is a recognized speaker nationally and internationally and is a regular columnist for Optometric Management, Optometry Times, and other journals. He serves as the federal advocacy representative for New York State for the AOA and is a member of the AOA New Technology Committee. He's also co-founder of the Young ODs of America. Dr. Bazan was named an Optometric Business Innovator in 2011 by Optometric Management Magazine, received the New York State Optometric Society Communications Award in 2015, and was named a Vision Monday Global Leader in 2011 and the Primary Care Optometry News Top 250 Optometrists of all time. He also is on the advisory committee of several industry companies and a dear friend. And hey, welcome, Justin. So glad to get you on here.
Alan, it's always awesome doing anything involved with you, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're a tough guy to nail down. I know life's busy again for you. It wasn't there for a while, though. But we're going to get into that because I want to talk about Bazan during COVID. But for the benefit of our viewers, Justin is one of my closest friends in the industry. We've shared tons of adventures inside and outside of optometry, wouldn't you say? About past 12
Absolutely.
years or so. We both got our shot.
Yeah, that's it. Time flies.
Yeah, well, it's interesting but Justin and I both got our shot on the optometry stage at about the same time, around the same subject matter. We were talking about internet and social media marketing, along with a good friend of ours, Nathan Bonilla Warford. We were they called us the Three Amigos for a while, for people who are too young to know about that. We didn't always agree on everything, and that made for some good interviews and shows where the three of us just went at it. And they were good days. I want to hear about it from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a boomer here who got lucky with social media and got out in front of it first. Remember how slow optometry is to change. So when optometrists are just learning about websites in 2008 or whatever, we've already been using social media successfully and started to build better practices with it. So we were way ahead, and it took several years for the industry just to catch on, let alone catch up. So in the beginning, we had a lot of personal opinions because there was no professional or expert opinions. It was just us. We were the professionals. We were the experts. And our personal opinions did vary, but we all had great contributions to make to a blooming industry. And I remember being at SECO probably in 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. And I was talking about, the use of the internet and cloud computing and how we had integrated Google and GDocs and Gmail and Google Voice and Facebook. And, that was the big one at the time. People may have grasped how to use the internet for the website, and that still was kind of a big topic. But using social media, and oh my God, people don't want to know about what their doctors are up to. They don't want to know about the personality of the practice. They just want to know they get their eyes checked and they get their glasses and contacts there, and that's it. And at the time, we kind of cracked that open. We not only kicked the door, in a little bit, we knocked it down and we opened it up and we said, well, here's what we're going to do, and we're not going to have any limits, and you can dial it back down a little bit. It's like the crazy fashion shows. The fashion that you see isn't what dials down, gets dialed down for the local consumer. But what we were doing at the time, we were just trying everything and anything. There was nothing off limits for us. Nate would dare me to say, he'd be like, I dare you to put your profile public and make your profile public and see what happens. And I said, no problem. I'll make it public and we'll go with it. And, just us three, along with some other early adapters, we really, really kind of just led the way on what was possible and showed people what they can do. So it's great being there.
Yeah, those were good days. I look back on them and I didn't even see what was going on with us or the industry at that time. I was just moving through it. You and I also, I think, and Nate, I solely got into it not to lead the industry in talking about it. I got into it just to grow my practice. When I realized that my patients were finding me on the internet in the late 90s, I'm like, well, let me be there, and
Yep.
and that simple statement just so many ODs just didn't pick up on it. Even to this day, there are people that, don't have the presence. And then, but I've toned it down too. I've come to realize that not every market is like my market. Not every market is like your market, especially. One of the things that one of the lectures Justin gives is how to earn more 5-star reviews. And I do too. And we do it totally differently. But there's not a right or wrong way. There's the way for the area that we're marketing to, right?
Absolutely. I think that, anytime you have somebody who's doing something well, there's things you can learn from them. It may be to replicate that success in your own practice because it applies. It may be to totally ignore it, but it gave you the idea on why that's not a good one to have. So I think learning from people such as ourselves, even though there's variance on ways we can do it, there's still very strong applications and lessons that can be learned and nuggets to be mined from those. But yeah, each market can vary, and understanding the market that you're in is very important. I think that there's some underlying foundations that apply to everybody, like how to earn a 5-star review. The foundation is the same, but there may be some different ways that you can take those knowledge and kind of rework it and fine tune it so it makes the most effective use in your practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's what good business owners do, though, is they learn and they apply, right? So they adjust on the fly, they take what somebody else is doing, they modify it. But I think that's part of being a good business person.
100%. Throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and what doesn't, don't do it again. And as you do that, you adjust yourself, you fine tune your methods and your ways, and they work for you down the road. We should do a lecture. Just made my latest like social review kind of soapbox has been making lemons out of the lemonade of a 1-star review. And you talk about getting 5-star reviews. We should combine that. Do a talk on that.
Oh, I got some really good 1-star review responses too.
I know you do.
Our techniques on how to handle that, which again, that varies differently depending on the market and the online reputation that you want to build for yourself. But that's what's beautiful about the social media, because it's a reflection of, if you're doing social media right, it really is a reflection of the practice's personality and the people involved in it.
Yeah. And we could talk about that all day, but this is your interview, so I do want to steer this back towards you. When I was writing the questions, I realized I probably don't even have to write questions, but I did have some things that I wanted to write down so that I remembered to ask you about them. And one of the themes that came up, and the song came up in my head, Bob Seger's "Turn the Page." That song about being on the road, and I'm not sure there are many ODs out there who've been on the road as much as you have, at least between around 2012, 2019. Tell us about your work on the road and how it came to a screeching halt because of COVID, and how that made you feel.
Wow. That's that's a question that I take stock in pretty much a lot of the time. So going back to why I was on the road, I was lucky enough to work with some companies that utilized my ability to connect with small groups or large lectures or big associations and present important information to those people. And I had a great time doing that. I honestly was on the road 2-3 days a week, 125 to 150,000 miles a year consistently for, like a half decade. Before that, it was pretty much conferences and then maybe once or twice a month. But in the last few years, it was a lot. It was a lot on the road. And I think that finding your speaking ability is something that was one of the most, wonderful things that I was ever thrown into. So for those of you guys out there who are like, well, how did Bazan get a chance to be on the road so much? It's honestly saying yes to an opportunity that might scare the crap out of you and just taking it and doing it. And then from there, things will happen. But if you are presented with an opportunity, say yes first, figure it out later. Honestly, those opportunities may not come up again because there's other people that they can look to. So if you're not saying yes to that first one, there may not be a second one. So say yes, get out there, even if it scares you. Things that tend to scare the crap out of you, you grow from, and then you actually look for things and challenge. One of the things that felt like it was a dream to me is I was just last Tuesday? No. Yeah, it was last week. I was lecturing for an MBA program at Fordham University, outside of the industry. And I've done it a couple times, but this time was special. This was like, really, I kind of lectured it as as more of like a movie or a story. And it was giving great insights to future leaders in the business world. And that felt awesome and amazing. And it was because I challenged myself. When I was first presented with the opportunity, I'm like, I'm comfortable in optometry. I'm not comfortable with MBA students, but you know what? I will, take on this challenge. I said yes to it, and then I figured it out later, and it turned out to be awesome. The feedback I got was great. But being on the road has its challenges. Anybody's going to tell you that it's probably not meant to be a long-term thing. There's a pendulum in life, right? So my road pendulum was pedal was to the metal, and I was going hard at it. And other things suffer in that. So what happened with COVID, though, is it went from here, and instead of kind of resetting back a little bit, it was slammed the other way. I went from several days of being on the road to 5 days of being in the office with primary care. But that was after two months of shutdown.
Right, after shutdown, right.
Yeah, Alan, you remember we were in Seco a year ago. We were having a great time in Seco, and as they say, it was all good just a week ago, because a week after Seco, that's when the New York City started to have its first COVID pop up. We were going to isolate it to that area of the Bronx, and nobody had to worry about anything. And then all of a sudden, the New York City school shut down, and everybody was like, "Oh crap, it's kind of a big deal." We shut down that Friday, and we did not open back up. So that was Friday the 13th. An ominous date. And we didn't open back up until May 25th, right? CDC lifted its routine care, said it was okay on the May 17th or something. So a week later we were open. But for those 2 months, not only wasn't I on the road, I wasn't in practice. I was pretty much in a secluded part of upstate New York, right outside of Woodstock. Actually, kind of went on the main roads in Woodstock, New York, just chilling in a 200-year-old barn that they made into an Airbnb. And it was a really weird time going from 100 miles an hour to 0. And it was hard to adjust. Some people learned to play guitar, picked up a second language. I honestly stayed in sweatpants, drank wine at 11 in the morning, and played video games as I binge watched Netflix. So it was something. I don't know if it was a much needed respite for my mind and my body, but it was bizarre for so many different ways, including that. But then when we got back into practice, the office became a very lean and efficient office, and lots of ups, lots of downs, and then it just became a dull hum of a fine-tuned machine. And a daily grind of me just seeing patients every 30 minutes, obviously scaled way down. We went from an office where we had 2 doctors running, front desk person, optician, a vision therapist, a tech, and now it's me and one other amazing assistant. And we see a patient every half hour, and it's still like this. And I know that we're all in different parts of recovery. I can tell you some offices that I know they hadn't missed a beat. Some offices are 100%. Some offices are like my office, where we're still at reduced capacity. And I think it's a very strange time in the industry and in the world and in humanity, because we're all at different places, different levels of comfort, and different levels of stages of opening up, and hopefully no new stages of shutting back down. Although I am worried about all this new variant talk that I hear popping up in the world.
To give you credit, like New York took it on the chin. I don't care what anyone says. Not only the COVID, but what the COVID did to a place like New York. And people left the city and they're not coming back. They don't want to be in a situation like that where they're caught in the middle of that vast metropolis with so many people. It's almost impossible to get 6 feet away from anyone in that city. So, that really impacted things. And I think that that had a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. New York was an alien town to me. I remember it was March 15th, I went to the hardware store and started to purchase supplies and additional PPE and started wearing a mask. And this was at the time where they were saying, like, don't wear a mask unless you have symptoms, stay home only if you're sick. it was weird because I'm out there understanding how this works and looking to other countries who were already going through it. And I'm, wearing my mask, I'm isolating. It was just a few days before I took off to Woodstock. But here, walking around the city, and there was a mix between people that understood and had extreme sense of almost terror, and then other people that are like, what are you talking about? This is going to maybe be a couple days. We've isolated it. No big deal. And it was a strange time. And then, coming back down in May, and even in end of May, the city was still pretty much a ghost town. You could have gone to Times Square at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and only maybe seen, a dozen people, not 10,000 people. It was absolutely bizarre.
That's crazy.
And
no line at
there's
Shake
signs
Shack.
of
No line at Shake Shack.
no line at Shake Shack. Well, there was no lines anywhere because you weren't allowed into any places. And right now we have opened up the vaccination process to pretty much all adults, which is good. New York right now stands at over a third of the people have had at least one shot. The rates of COVID continue to be on the decline for now, which is great. And businesses are starting to come back. The weather is starting to get nicer. So the outdoor bar scene, the outdoor dining scene, and hopefully the outdoor entertainment scene is going to come back. We are utilizing a vaccination passport for those who have had both shots. There may be events that we're able to go to because we have decreased our odds of coming down with a severe form of the disease. So hopefully we can return to somewhat of a more normal life, but man, it's been tough. Alan, we need to get to a show, man. Like we haven't, this is not part of a normal human existence here. I miss out on our opportunities to have that social aspect of just going to a show, So I'm ready. I'm there mentally. I've already traveled. I am starting to see some of the consulting gigs come back. I'm comfortable in taking the appropriate measures to protect others and to protect myself, including being vaccinated and still continuing to be diligent about hand sanitizing and face masks and social distancing. But I'm there. I'm ready. So let me know.
Same way. When I look back on this whole thing, I know I did my part. Again, let's, COVID, we could talk about that again for hours. I'm going to move on a little bit if that's good for you. Park Slope High, there it is. That's the mug. Well, I'm going to take a little break. We're going to go back, and this is a picture that I pulled up out of a God knows where. This was the very first ODs on Facebook party ever.
Oh, wow.
It was at the AOA in Chicago in like 2012, I think. And that's you, obviously, on the left. And that's Nate Bonilla-Warford on the right. And Ron from All About Vision in the middle of us. What a great group. It was we had some great talks and stuff, and by the way, this was Nate was on his computer. I don't have the picture here, but I have it somewhere, of on his computer, like live streaming when live streaming was brand new. So it was a cutting edge time.
Awesome. That's
and then
epic.
I got one from the
That's
second one here too.
Great group right there.
That was West.
Oh, yeah.
The second part, you and Richard Hom outside of the, we did it in that little bar area in the, was it the Venetian or the Palazzo, I think? Yeah, Palazzo. Good times.
Yep.
Those were good times. But let's
we'll get back there. We'll definitely get back.
Oh, no doubt. And when we get off of this call, I want to talk to you about like setting something up. I want to talk about the talks because when I was looking at your CV, I mean, there was 62 pages of talks.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I mean, unbelievable. So when I say he travels, I mean, I'm not just saying that lately. I mean, this guy goes all over the place. And you're all over the place in the topics you cover in a good way. Everything from internet marketing to contact lenses to UV risks, ortho-K cross-linking. The list goes on and on. What is your optometric first love to speak about?
Business, practice management. I think that looking back, I guess you look back and you say, what's your passion? I think one of the biggest kicks that I get is when somebody comes up And it could be, I don't know, after the lecture, and that's fine. But when you hear somebody come up years later and be like, look, I started a private practice and you had a lot to do with that, and thank you for that. That's the ultimate kind of satisfaction or reward that you get. But talking about practice management where we inspire the next generation, that's like my main passion. And I live for that stuff. We help a lot of people in a lot of different ways, but helping somebody say, all right, it's time for me to do this. Let's start this private practice. Let's get this going. I think that is ultimately where I feel the most joy.
That's awesome. And I also like to dig up, when I look through the talks, the ones with great names, and you have a bunch. So I just zeroed in on one, the post-contactolyptic world. Tell us what that lecture was about.
So, wow, I haven't remembered that. It's kind of like what's going on now. So I kind of was warning everybody about threats to patient access. I was warning people about that the doctor-patient relationship isn't as solid as you think it is, and that patients may be persuaded away from you for convenience and the ability to renew prescriptions for contacts online and to purchase contacts that might not necessarily have any doctor-patient relationship involvement. And it was just a heads up about technologies that were allowing this to take place. Sorry for the sirens. I'm ground floor in Brooklyn. I hope that was just a fire truck going somewhere. Yeah. Not too serious. And, but I was just giving everybody the heads up of the changes.
Say that again?
No, I was just giving everybody about the heads up with changes in technology and how the consumer thinks. Because we think as doctors, like, why would anybody do that? That's crazy. No, they would come to the doctor to get their contacts. Why would they do it from their phone and an app? That doesn't make sense. But that's not what happens in the minds of our consumers who are our patients, because that industry looks at them as the consumer. We look at them as the patient, and we project onto them different ideals and mindsets, and they look at them as the consumer, and they project on different ideals and mindsets. And I think having an awakening from where both sides were coming from is where I was going with that lecture.
That's awesome. And it's more relevant now than ever with what's going on in Michigan. And this is a good point for me and you to emphasize to our viewers, especially the younger crew, how important advocacy is at the state and national level, and how much the AOA does to fight these things. One of the things I just wrote an article about the precedent that has been set by the actions the AOA has taken to fight this in other states. So Michigan, which sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, really there's precedent where they can go in there from what they've done before and build on that, and hopefully that'll be done. But tell us a little bit about what you think about advocacy and its importance.
It's critical. It's of the utmost importance. If you love optometry and you love what you do, you need to be involved in some way or form in organized optometry. This quote comes up, and it's probably been said by many different people, but you've got either time or money that you can help out with. And if you can't do both, pick one. Right? So either make your donations or get involved, or hopefully do both. But if you love optometry and you want to protect your livelihood, advocacy is critical to that happening and continuing to be successful in optometry. So get involved, whether you want to make that donation, time, or both. Hopefully, it's you got to get it done. Get it done now.
There you go. Now, you've also traveled in your speaking outside of the country. Where I know where you've been interesting, but why don't you tell our viewers the interesting international stuff you've lectured at?
It's unbelievable how once the ball gets rolling, the ball gets rolling, and you never know where it's going to take you. I've been to Europe. I've been to South America. I've been north of the border, all through Canada. I've done a lot of the international lectures, but there's a couple places that do stand out. If any of my Colombian friends are watching right now, I miss you guys. I need to get back down to Colombia because they do an amazing job down there with their conferences and some of the nicest people on the planet. But it's another thing where once you get out there and you start to build your reputation for being somebody who delivers a lecture that people enjoy, the opportunities will be there for those things. So get out there. It doesn't matter if you think you're a great speaker or not. Really, not too many people are decent in the beginning. And just like most things in life, if you are passionate about it and you put in the practice and you acquire the knowledge, you will get better at it, and you will get noticed. And there's a lot of demand right now for new faces. Look, if I look at the people that I respected in the speaking world, they're still around, but they have taken other roles and they've stepped back from it. And there's a cycle of new people that came up, and we were part of that. And now I'm at the end of that, where I want to try to pass it and create new opportunities and kind of pass the baton to the next generation. And that's what we do with young ODs. I'm not the young OD anymore, but I have Young ODs of America for that very purpose, for inspiring the next generation and creating opportunities for the next generation to step into current leadership roles and current opportunities within the industry, and create business opportunities and help with private practice.
Yeah, great segue into one of the last topics I wanted to go into, and that's Yoda. Tell us about the concept and who's involved with it, and how people can get value out of what you've put together.
Yeah, so Yoda came together now several years ago when John Wynn and Kirk Kupke were in New York City, and they were classmates, and they didn't really know about the scene here in New York City. So they said, well, if we don't know about the scene and we're having trouble getting into the scene, why don't we create a scene? And I was introduced by Kathy Mastroda to John Wynn, and we hit it off. And then John was like, wow, what Kathy said about you is true. You do have a pretty good network. Why don't we leverage that network and create a group of like-minded optometrists here in the city and see where it goes? So it started out with a local chapter in New York, and then it ended up being across the country, and who knows, someday it'll probably be an international thing. But the foundation is we get together under social circumstances and we bond, and that's it. And when you get together a bunch of optometrists in a social environment, the business stuff comes up, the clinical stuff comes up, other topics come up, but it's done in a relaxed way where we're all sharing and learning from each other. And it's not necessarily we're learning from the industry experts, it's learning from the expertise of having really smart, awesome people in our group, and people that are going through the same things that they're going through and figuring it out. And then you've got some old heads thrown in there as mentors, where I can say, well, that's awesome, but here's some more information, or here's how I did it, or here's what I heard somebody in your situation should look into here. And it's been awesome because, it's really taken off. Now we're, I don't even know, 5,000-6,000 members, taking a little bit of a dip of activity during the pandemic, obviously, but.
That's my favorite picture of us. Look at that.
I love that. I remember that bottle too. That was a very excellent choice beverage right there.
We went all out. That was the Pappy, right? The Pappy 20. That was a big night. That was in Texas last January, 2 Januaries ago, I think, right?
No, that was in Arizona.
Oh,
that was, I believe, an Essler sales meeting.
Yes, that was great. So what is, last question, and then we're going to roll, but how is your career, both clinically and lecture, travel, writing, going to change post-COVID? Are you going to be the same Justin Bazan to the industry you were as you were? Let me say that again. Are you going to be the same Justin Bazan after COVID that you were before professionally?
Doubtful. I really think it's doubtful. Having your freedoms taken away from you has made me really value the relationships with family and friends. And I don't want to wait on opportunities till I'm later on in life. So I'm looking right now on ways to either maintain a business or find value in a business that can help fuel a lifestyle of more world exploration on a schedule that I want to choose myself. So I don't want to be trapped to or confined to a schedule of somebody else is doing. So right now I'm looking for, or in my mind, I'm creating, I'm a big visualizer. So right now I'm looking for when the world opens up, which I feel should be in 2022, how can I see more of it, and how can I do it in a way where I have businesses that can be done on demand, or as a business that's generating income passively. So I can enjoy traveling, visiting friends, finding activities to do with you, and just having that world open up. Because, man, having everything just literally locked down and ripped from you, and your freedoms just say now they're confined in this little box, that was tough for me mentally. And now I'm like, I don't want to waste time. So 2022 is going to be a world of hopefully a little bit more freedom of exploration, and getting a chance to value and appreciate the relationships with friends and family throughout the country and the world.
That's great. And I think that probably applies to a lot of us, where, if we can find a way to get passive income, if we can find a way to enjoy living in the moment, being mindful, and practicing mindfulness is really a great way. I've been working on that the past few years, and it's really taken me in directions I never thought I would go. So that's great advice. But
I'm a decade into meditation. So I've been meditating for a decade now, and it's really, oh man, it's helped me so much in ways that it's hard to describe. It's one of those things where you understand why so many people do it, but it's something that's been a blessing as far as helping get my thoughts together and help me live a less hot-tempered, more rational life, which has been something that has helped contribute to success and enjoyment of life.
Look, you meditated the hair right off your head. Good job.
I meditated this morning before we jumped on the call.
No sense in me meditating. It's already gone. So anyhow, listen, it was great having you here today. I really looked forward to this interview, and we have so much. As I'm talking to you, I'm realizing, God, I want to go off in this direction, that direction. Would you be willing to come back maybe 6-8 months down the road, and we'll see where you are? And and I don't believe for 1 second anything's going to change for you. I think when things are back to normal, you're going to be the same old Justin Bazan I knew before, but maybe they will. So let's find out a few months down the road. Will you come back?
I'm not coming back on the show. I'm coming down to the studio, and we're going to sit there with a bottle of nice whiskey, and we're going to have a little a cocktail chat as we do this again.
Oh, I'm going to have to edit the hell out of that one, right? Yeah, but definitely.
I'm ready though.
And Justin, you're such a good friend. You made it down here twice during COVID, and we did a fire pit, and we hung out in the studio actually before, without time to interview, but good times, man. So we'll do that again soon. Yeah, actually, I'll tell you what. If you do that, you don't have to wait that long. If you actually come down to the studio to be interviewed, we'll get it on way faster, because that'll be that's what I set the studio up for. We've got you saw it, a real setup here. But anyhow, listen.
I'm down.
All right. Have a great week. Be safe, and talk to you real soon. And don't hang up, because I want to talk to you when I turn the recording off.
All right, Alan. Thank you for having me. This is an awesome platform. I really appreciate you and value our friendship. Thank you, my friend.
Back at you, bud.
Contact lenses continue to be an important part of our practices. As such, a discussion of the ocular surface that supports lens wear is critical. Our patients' environments are challenging. As can be seen here, contact lens surface drying is an unfortunate byproduct for many lens wearers. It's not surprising that when those patients who've discontinued lens wear are questioned, over 50% of them report doing so because of comfort issues. And although there are a number of factors that can affect comfortable lens wear, we'll focus on the role of ocular surface wellness in optimizing the lens wearing experience. We recommend putting a system in place to determine a patient's subjective symptoms, and also assessing the surface of the eye in great detail in hopes to gather information that will be helpful when fitting patients with contact lenses. One of the first steps is to gather an adequate history of ocular dryness. Two examples shown here are the SPEED questionnaire and the Ocular Surface Disease Index, or OSDI. Although many current contact lens wearers may report that their lenses are comfortable, sometimes this doesn't tell the whole story regarding their true wearing experience. In our attempts to more accurately understand a patient's wearing experience, we ask them to grade their comfort on a scale from 0 to 10 at the beginning and end of the day, with 0 being the least comfortable and 10 being the most comfortable. What we oftentimes expose is a significant drop in comfort towards the end of the day, and certainly something that needs to be addressed in order to mitigate the chance of patients silently dropping out of lens wear. Just as important as the subjective questionnaire is also the anterior segment examination. It's critical to identify patients with any anterior blepharitis as seen on the left. Additionally, viewing the lid margin is critical. The video on the right shows a serrated lid margin, which is typical for those with meibomian gland dysfunction. Also, when pressure is placed on the outside of the lid, no meibum can be expressed. But there are a number of things that are just simply not visible with a standard slit lamp examination that should be considered when assessing ocular surface wellness. The use of lissamine green and fluorescein allows a greater appreciation of the quality of the ocular surface. The lid wiper is a portion of the marginal conjunctiva of the upper eyelid that acts as a wiping surface to spread the tear film over the ocular surface, or in contact lens wearers, the surface of the contact lens. Lid wiper epitheliopathy is simply staining of the lid wiper and is associated with symptoms of dryness. Viewing conjunctival and corneal staining with lissamine green is also a sign of ocular surface compromise. If present, fluorescein also allows us to see punctate epitheliopathy. Additionally, because of the hydrophilic nature of the molecule, it allows for the visualization of the tear film. Normal tear film breakup time is expected to be greater than 10 seconds. As you can see in this patient, it's severely reduced. Fluorescein also makes the tear meniscus easily visible so that its viability can be assessed, as seen in the bottom right video. Additional diagnostics are also available to help in screening those that may have ocular surface disease. Tear lab measures tear osmolarity and is useful to help identify those with undiagnosed dry eye. The inflammadry seen on the right measures whether the tear film contains matrix metalloproteinases that are at a higher concentration than 41 nanograms per milliliter, another common sign in dry eye patients. Assessing your contact lens wearers for ocular surface disease is critical for the successful contact lens practice. Incorporate a history that standardizes the questions that are being asked. Additionally, consider utilizing the vital dyes along with advanced technologies to help in identifying those whose ocular surface may be compromised and needs attention. We feel that this will improve visual and ocular health outcomes for our contact lens wearers, which is ultimately why we do what we do.